to Securing America with me, Frank Gaffney, the program that's a kind of owner's manual for protecting the country we love against all enemies, foreign and domestic, to God's glory and that of his kingdom. We are hearing a lot at the moment about a problem that is so foreign to most Americans' experience that it seems incomprehensible that it might be looming in our future. It's described in various ways, but food insecurity captures the idea. In some places around the world, in the wake of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia and the ripple effects that it's created, and a number of other factors that are operating at the moment, which we'll be talking about with our first guest, we're looking at a world in which there may not be just insecurity with respect to food, but famine. And it remains to be seen whether such a horror might be inflicted upon the American people as well, at least some of us. A man who has been studying this closely in recent years is our colleague and good friend, Lieutenant Colonel Tommy Waller, United States Marine Corps Reserves. He is these days the Director of Infrastructure Security at the Center for Security Policy and has been specializing in various vulnerabilities that our country faces, which might be exploited by hostile powers. This one is emerging as a very serious new vulnerability, and we're anxious to catch up with him. Tommy spoke to a group in Washington, D.C. yesterday about this problem, and I want to pick his brains particularly about what he learned as well as addressed in the course of that conversation with specialists in the agricultural space. Tommy Waller, it's good to have you back, sir. Welcome.
Thank you, Frank, for having me on. Yeah, it was an honor yesterday to be with the American Agri Women. Their slogan is "A force for truth," and so no better fitting slogan for that organization right now when it comes to the truth that food security is national security.
Right. I want to get to the truth, Tommy, because we're being told a lot of things that don't seem to quite add up. And one of them is that there has been a series of accidents at food production and processing plants across the United States, a spate of fires, even a couple of airplane crashes that have taken down some of these facilities. What are your sources telling you is going on here? Is this all, as we've been led to believe, a matter of coincidence and sort of normal operational problems, or is something else going on?
Well, Frank, first of all, I'm very glad that at least it's being covered in the news. Now, I think that there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that the fires, and at the moment, what I have is 30, the number 30 major fires over the last 16 months.
Wow.
These are the reason that they're hitting the news is twofold. One is that most of them are huge. They are catastrophic fires that are doing immense amounts of damage. And the second reason it's hitting the news, which is a good thing, is that people are beginning to pay much closer attention to the food and agriculture industry and issues that could curtail food production, distribution, consumption. And so one of the difficult things is to try to ascertain, is this just accidental? Is there a malevolent piece to it? I don't have an answer yet, but it's something that I think needs to be investigated. And so one of the things that, I do want people to understand, the food and agriculture industry does experience fires frequently. You think about food production, food is a fuel. I mean, when we eat it, it fuels our body. And so when it comes to being a fuel for fire, it's absolutely the same case. And so, the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA, put out an article last month. Now, the title of the article didn't help anything when it comes to assuring people that this is not malevolent. The article's title was "Nothing to See Here." But they did explain that there's, in 2019, 2,000 fires that year in the overall food and agriculture industry. Part of what I'm trying to look at is patterns. is the size of these fires. In terms of determining how they started or whether there was criminal intent, that is a difficult thing talking to fire investigators because most of the time they won't undergo a detailed investigation unless there was some clues that it was malice. And so the point, though, Frank, I think is thankfully Americans are waking up to pay attention to this. We hope that they'll wake up to protect this infrastructure.
Yeah. Tommy, let's talk about some of the other factors that are contributing to what seems to be an impending, very serious food shortage problem, to say the least. I mentioned Ukraine and Russia. Both are exporters of large quantities of grains. Give us just a sense of what an impact the war in Ukraine has had so far and is likely to have going forward with respect to those two countries' exports.
Sure. Yeah, Frank. So, when it comes to our food and agriculture sector, as you know, there's numerous forms of warfare, right? So what we see in Ukraine right now is kinetic war, actual kinetic warfare. And so, for example, over the weekend, Ukraine lost its third largest grain terminal to a Russian missile and air attack. So this is a place that would be storing and exporting grain to the rest of the world, and now it's in ruins. It's going to take years to rebuild that. That is kinetic warfare. The other downstream effect that you have is as the world witnesses this conflict in one of the largest bread baskets of the world, countries begin to take precautionary measures, and you can't blame them for doing it, where they stop their own exports to make sure that their population is going to be okay. So you see countries like India stopping exports. You see China stopping exports. The first downstream effects, Frank, are going to be in North Africa, in the Middle East, and in Europe. And you and I both know that these are places that are already in many ways threatened by conflict, particularly that of the jihadi stripe. So you can bet that you will start to see much more kinetic war, people fighting over resources to avoid famine in these parts of the world. That will also affect the security of the United States.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you pointed this out, Tommy, because one of the things that I think, again, not, thank God, having had much experience lately with serious systemic food shortages in this country, is how catastrophic it can be on a sort of civil society, an ordered society. If there simply is starvation taking place, people are desperate and they will do whatever they need to try to get their hands on food. And that can bring down governments and has over, well, all of history, I think it's fair to say.
Yes, sir.
The Chinese are another factor in all of this. You mentioned them, Tommy. I understand that the Chinese have hoarded immense quantities of food, which again raises a question whether they anticipated something happening that was going to be disruptive of the food supplies. We only have about a minute, so just give me 30 seconds on that. We'll pause and we'll come right back.
Sure. Yeah, Frank. The Chinese have a lot of people to feed. We know, we've read their book, Unrestricted Warfare. We know that the Chinese Communist Party, from its inception, has used food as a weapon, that millions of Chinese citizens have starved in the past. And I don't put it past the Chinese Communist Party to use food as a weapon against the rest of the world, just the
Yeah.
same way that we've seen them weaponize uh, a virus and the response to that virus to expand their totalitarian control.
Hold the thought, Tommy, because all of that is subject for further conversation about what the Chinese Communist Party is up to and how food warfare might figure into their ultimate objective, which is to take down the United States and become the world's dominant power. We're under no illusion about that, I hope. We're going to talk about that with Tommy Waller and more right after this.